Praj Matrix. The DSIR certified R&D facility forms the backbone for the company's endeavors towards a clean energy-based bioeconomy. Delivering extensive research by over 90 scientists, Praj has secured over 300 patents in innovation. Praj's founder chairman Dr. Pramod Chaudhary was bestowed with the prestigious George Washington Carver Award 2020 by US-based Biotechnology Innovation Organization.
This is our home, a paradise. So beautiful and perfect, so harmonious that it could create life. Humans, so evolved and intelligent, capable of replicating nature's power of creation. With the discovery of fossil fuels and petroleum and the generation of power and electricity, we advanced in technology and infrastructure. And our world began to change. Population increased. And we started needing more energy. Thus we changed the face of the earth. But do we realize that our creations are slowly destroying the earth?
At present, we are spewing more than 110 million tons of global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day, as if it's an open sewer. So yes, we do have to change. The scientists have long warned us that we must, and now Mother Nature is doing so with her much more powerful voice.
Solar panels were first used in satellites because we wanted it to last forever. Otherwise, the batteries would wear out.
Do we have the ability to solve this crisis? Fortunately, the exciting answer to this question is also yes.
अगर हम डेवलपमेंट एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली नहीं करते हैं, विकास और प्रकृति पर्यावरण की रक्षा नहीं करते हैं, तो विकास हमारे लिए भी संकट बन सकता है.
Avada is a leading builder of renewable energy projects in India. We have built complex solar and wind power projects aggregating to over 1.1 gigawatt capacities across diverse geographies. We have built some of India's largest capacities. We were the first in the country to build a 1 gigawatt solar portfolio.
This is only the beginning. We need scale to power the entire country using the solar, scale to change the brown sources of energy with cleaner sources of energy like solar and wind. Thanks to our amazing engineering, procurement and construction team, we have managed to do the solar project and wind project in a very economical and sustainable fashion.
Our emphasis on systems and processes has enabled the organization for flawless execution by consistently decreasing its on-ground development cycle, thus completing projects several months before schedule. We have pioneered solar power solutions, both in terms of plant size and total installation capacity, helping bring the solar tariff closer to grid parity. The plants we have built were numbered among those with the highest efficiency in India.
We are showing the world that solar energy is not only sustainable form of energy, but investing in solar can be profitable too.
With our strong EPC execution capabilities and project portfolio, we had managed to build a competitive advantage through already locked-in land banks, long-term signed MOUs, PPAs with state utilities. We have drawn investors like Asian Development Bank, General Electric Capital, and DG from Germany.
In next 5 years, India should become the largest clean energy power producer in the world.
We need to be responsible because in the coming years, India is going to be a major manufacturing hub for the world. Currently, Germany, Denmark and Costa Rica are the leading countries with regards to renewable energy generation.
In the next 10 years, we will take India forward to a sustainable journey.
Avartha is a socially conscious organization conceived with a vision to look at all levels of social change. The scalability of renewable projects allows its usage in varied geographies and applications. This presents a unique advantage for India, where 540 million out of 1.2 billion Indians do not have access to electricity.
Teachers from government school are trained in specialized subjects to enhance their training delivery mechanism by using experiential training methodology. We work with the women in the rural communities to ensure that they can learn stitching, they can learn the beautician course. It doubles the income of the family, and what it also does, it ensures that women's own self-esteem becomes better. As a holistic, environmental friendly company, our green efforts does not stop with clean energy. Due to non-availability of medical services and lack of awareness among rural Indians, we are seeing a high rate of infant mortality. We need to bridge this gap which exists between urban and rural India.
I know the world can come together as one at a time of crisis. We always have.
This is a moment in time when business leaders, government officials, and citizens from all over India have come together to embrace the potential for a bright new future and a sustainable world.
We are the generation responsible for the way we are going to be for the next 500 years. All we have to do is to start looking up at the sky Let's create a history that's going to be cherished. Avada, promise of a sustainable future.
GE Renewable Energy.
We harness the Earth's most abundant resources.
The strength of the wind.
The heat of the sun.
And the force of water.
Delivering green electrons. To power the world's biggest economies.
And the most remote communities.
With an innovative spirit.
And an entrepreneurial mindset.
We engineer energy products, grid solutions, and digital services
that create industry-leading value for our customers around the world.
We see the promise of renewable energy
everywhere we look.
Our team has the courage,
scale,
passion,
diversity,
and resourcefulness needed to deliver that promise
wherever and however the world needs it.
Together with our customers, we're proving that no one ever has to choose
between affordable, reliable,
accessible, or sustainable energy.
We are unleashing limitless energy.
We at O2 Power target to do 1 to 1.5 gigawatt of wind and solar projects every year. We have already won our first 1.5 gigawatt and we plan to commission our first asset by end of the current calendar year.
We have developed experienced teams across the renewable verticals, namely wind, solar and storage. On the back of our strong team and commitment, we are future ready to provide round-the-clock power from renewables. This makes us one of the very few companies in India to supply all renewable solutions.
Indian financial and capital markets are growing at a fast pace for the RE sector. Additionally, there has been significant overseas interest and participation in the sector over the last couple of years. O2 Power is well poised to capitalize this market. We already have $500 million in committed equity from our existing sponsors. Firstly, we have a strong promoter and management pedigree. Secondly, we are raising project finance at very competitive rates, both from domestic and international lenders. We will also tap international and domestic bond markets post-commissioning of a sizable project at a later date.
We in O2 Power are committed to building a culture of success. We recognize the key influence that organizational culture has on our safety and quality outcomes. Specific training for frontline managers and staff is critical in developing skilled leaders. We make sure that quality and safety orientation from day one is imparted to every new employee hired at any level, including leadership positions. That includes site-specific scenarios like hazard and information, emergency action plans, and other common procedures. For us, culture is really an attribute of value systems, beliefs, expectations, and commitments which actually impact individual behavior at all levels. We have firm belief in the power of engineering and solve problems invariably by engineering solutions rather than applying ad hoc approach. Zero harm and happy customer is our mantra.
We expect to get fine interest rates at the time of issuance based on our strong brand, quality assets, management, and sponsors. We are also quite active in the M&A space and are actively looking for operational and under construction projects of decent size.
So far, what has worked well for the sector is the sheer number of bids which has been floated over the last 12 months. Kudos to SECI and MNRE. We have been really thankful to them that they have been able to bring the tariff down even in these tough times. The real concern is that construction on the ground is not starting. Things are stuck either in the signing of the PPAs or they are stuck on transmission evacuation related issues. We hope that in the coming months, government will solve these issues and the real work on the ground will start.
As chairman of the CII Renewable Energy Council, it is a pleasure to invite all of you to this extreme critical event on making India Atmanirbhar in a renewable energy equipment manufacturing. The purpose of this initiative is to encourage the establishment of the global manufacturing hub in India for renewable energy equipment manufacturing. This will help create a long-term sustainable jobs, lower the cost of energy, energize the MSME sectors, create a robust export economy, provides the energy security and reduce the oil import cost. The wind industry is already supporting the government the vision to make in India. With over 80% localizations and the robust supply chain in India, it has really created a good value to the society. With an annual manufacturing capacity of 10,000 megawatt and supply chain of over 4,000 SME, many global wind energy companies have set up their manufacturing units in India for their export business of the global market.
Praj Industries, India's most accomplished industrial biotechnology company, is driven by innovation, integration, and delivery capabilities. Over the past 4 decades, Praj has focused on the environment, energy, and agri-process industry with over 750 customer references spanning more than 75 countries across 5 continents. Praj's diverse portfolio comprises of bioenergy solutions, critical process equipment and skids, brewery and beverages, zero liquid discharge systems, and high-purity water systems. Praj is listed on the Bombay and National Stock Exchanges of India. All the customized solutions provided to customers are backed by the state-of-the-art R&D center, Praj Matrix. The DSIR certified R&D facility forms the backbone for the company's endeavors towards a clean energy-based bioeconomy. Delivering extensive research by over 90 scientists, Praj has secured over 300 patents in innovation. Praj's founder chairman, Dr. Pramod Chaudhary, was bestowed with the prestigious George Washington Carver Award 2020 by US-based Biotechnology Innovation Organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll start the meeting in a few minutes.
Good morning, all. Plinio.
Good morning, all. Calling from Brazil. All set here.
I'll just test sharing the screen just to confirm if that would work. Just 1 second. Do you guys confirm seeing the shared screen?
Yes, we can see it.
It's the presentation, right?
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, Mr. Somaya.
Okay, Danielle, I can see your presentation, but it's not in presentation mode. It's not in presentation mode. Now,
is it
now it's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'll try to unmirror. Just 1 second.
Bom dia.
Yeah. How do we take this out?
Yeah, Samir, how are you?
I'm very
Chancellor Samir Somaya. Glad to hear from you.
Pleasure. How do I pronounce the names? It's Ricardo Abreu?
Hello, morning. Oi, Plínio,
Hello.
tudo bem?
Hello, Engineer Abreu. How are you? Good morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning,
Nice to
Ricardo.
be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And how do I pronounce the name of Mr. Daniel Vale, or how do you say it?
Hi, Samir. Good morning. It's
Hi.
good afternoon. Actually, it's Daniel Vale.
Vale, Daniel
Daniel Vale.
Okay.
Mr. Somaya, you can start the session now. I think we have all the speakers.
So who's going first? Srishti?
So it's you will be starting the session.
No, I know. Who's the first speaker after that?
First here is Mr. Malun Laird. After you do the context setting.
Got it. So are we going to go live, or are we live? We are live?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So welcome everybody to this international experience where we have our colleagues from Brazil. Bom dia to all of you. It's very early morning for you. We are very happy that you could join us today. My job is to set the context of how we can learn from your experience given our own Indian context. So India has 40 million farmers connected with sugarcane, and most of their land holding is less than 1 hectare. Pursuant to the FRP policy of the government of India a few years ago, India has gone into a structural surplus production of sugarcane, which then consequently went into a structural surplus of sugar, which is very different from times much before that, which was a lot of surplus and lot of deficit. So this structural surplus of sugar would lead into farmer income volatility because it led to cane price arrears. So the government of India came with a very good policy that this structural surplus needs to be seen as an asset for the country for meeting the stability of farmer earnings, energy security of the country, and because ethanol is a green fuel, mitigating climate change also. And in June 2021, the government announced a still more aggressive ethanol blending program roadmap. Because of the success in the last 2 to 3 years, they advanced the target of blending of 20% from 2030 to 2025. And very aggressively, they targeted that ethanol production capacity by 2025 should be 15 billion liters, anticipating that 7.5 billion will come in the sugarcane sector, whether it comes from molasses, B, or whether it comes from syrup or juice, and also part 7.5 billion from a new policy of grain. And thinking that about 10 to 10.5 billion liters will go to the ethanol blending program, and the balance will go for other ethanol needs in the country. Now, this is very ambitious, and the Indian sugar industry is growing very rapidly to meet this challenge. It gives us optionality, and also many of us considering adding grain so that we have better capacity utilizations. So what was earlier a 3 or 4 state single feedstock for the ethanol blending program becomes a multi-crop, multi-state point when so India with its riches of sun and soil can meet this energy crop for our needs. So with this context, I would like to welcome you to speak, but I have, there are some questions I have. And since the time is at the end of the session is only 5 minutes for Q&A, I would like to just tell you what my questions are. And so if any of you could incorporate them in your presentation, it would be delightful for, for me, myself, and our audience to understand your outlook. My questions are, and these are not in order of what they're speaking, I'll just state them. How does the country Brazil deal with the changes required in the automotive sector? Does the car need to change, and how expensive is it to bring in either a new line or retrofit what I might have today? The same question for the fuel distribution system in terms of distributing ethanol fuel, or it could be pure ethanol. That is another question. My third question is, have you seen a significant change in air quality with the introduction of your ethanol program? My fourth question is, if you've had a shock to your production of ethanol because of sugarcane because of climate reasons, how has the stability of your program been? And last question, how do you view the EV, electric vehicles, in the context of your ethanol program? So these are my 5 questions. I can repeat them if anybody would like me to. But in this context, because a lot of people in India have also got this in the mind, and I would like you. So I would like to call on our first speaker, Mr. Marlon. I'm really sorry, I cannot pronounce your last name, how to pronounce it. Marlon Arias Leal, Coordinator General of Ethanol, Department of Biofuels of the Ministry of Mines and Energy from the Government of Brazil. We are privileged to have you with us today, and welcome to this session. Thank you. Obrigado.
Just give me 2 minutes. I will be sharing Mr. Marlon's PPT. I'm just asking my IT team to share it. Just give me 2 minutes.
Mr. Marlon, you are muted. Srishti, are you done? Mr. Marlon, we can't hear you still.
Apologies, please give me a minute. The IT team is about to present the presentation. Just give us 1 more.
While we wait for them, would somebody like to answer one of the questions I raised. Have we seen a change in the climate, in the air quality with the introduction of the ethanol program over the last 3 decades? Have you seen a significant change in air quality and in what direction, if any?
Chancellor Somaya, I have prepared, this is Plinio Nastari. I have prepared a presentation, and I believe your questions are addressed during my presentation. I suggest that as Mr. Arraes arranges his sound system, we move forward and you follow the next speaker. I will be ready to anticipate mine if that is the case.
The next speaker we have is actually Daniel Vale, but Srishti, what would you like me to do since Srishti is... Srishti, shall we go ask Daniel Vale to speak?
I'm available if needed, Mr. Somaya.
Yes.
Yes, if he's available. I'm just checking
Yes.
with the IT team.
Let us have Mr.
Sure.
Daniel Vale to speak. I'm delighted. He is from Kopersuker. He's the head of portfolio management, M&A, and strategy. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Chancellor Somaya. Again, my colleagues in this session, CII, also our audience, right? Which is, and I'm here trying to along with my other colleagues, to tell you a little bit of the ethanol Brazilian story. And I trust and I hope, alongside with my other knowledgeable colleagues, that we can answer the questions you've posed by the beginning of the session. And I'm here sitting, representing the production side, given that I'm with Kopersuker. Kopersuker is a 60-year-old entity in Brazil. It's a cooperative of producers, which today has production of around 34 partner sugarcane mills spread out in the main producing areas of Brazil and mainly São Paulo state. And alongside with those producing mills today, we crush around 95 million tons of cane, which is equivalent to 15% of Brazilian market share, which is the largest in Brazil, producing 4 to 5 billion liters of ethanol, and also 5 to 6 million tons of sugar, also selling to the grid 4 terawatts of energy. And Kopersuker's entity has the role to represent the sale of the assets, the producing assets that from those mills, the products, on our ethanol platform, also in our sugar platform, and having a port terminal in Santos, as well as with our technology piece, which is CTC, which is the Center for Technology for Cane Development. So on the Brazilian ethanol story, I think we should always start, and I'll leave some for my colleagues to comment on, but with the Proálcool. So this industry, this ethanol industry, is a 40-year-old fuel program. So it's not something new that we are adapting to it. Actually, it's a stable, sustainable, that has been through many ups and downs in our economy and in the global economy as well, along with oil. And the spur of that was in 1970, where we had the first oil crisis, and it has the second oil crisis in 1979 to 1986, putting the shape of our ethanol industry into full force and scale. And the program, in a nutshell, comprehended into incentives from agricultural producers to turn their activities into cane, and also building up industries to process into ethanol. And so we can say that our sugarcane industry has an agricultural DNA, although is a producer of ethanol and sugar. And on the demand side, also implementing the hydrous ethanol, so 100% cars fueled by ethanol with engines, and also the blend increase with anhydrous ethanol being blended into the gasoline, increasing from 15 to 22, whereas today our blend is at 27%. And saying that the Proálcool was the initiative that grew Brazil from the start So we were an industry in the center south back in 1975 with around 70 million tons of cane, where today it moved towards 220 million tons during the program. Our second phase of growth, which was from around 1990 after the deregulation of the sector, where private companies were able to export sugar to the world market, we had a second spur of growth from 220 towards 310. And lastly, and most importantly, with the flex fuel technology introduction in 2003, Brazil had the increase of from 200 to 600 million tons of cane, where during that 10-year period, Brazil built more than 170 mills, new units, which led us to have over the past 45 years a compound annual growth rate of 5% in the sector. And we are now looking to our next cycle for the sector, where we're going to have built our next growth. And here we bring the idea of the RenovaBio. Just as an X-ray for the sector, I know the chart may look a little bit polluted, but going straight to the point, the sector comprehends around 340 mills, crushing around 655 million tons of cane in the last crop through an area of 9 million hectares. And the industry of Brazil, it's not dedicated towards sugar nor towards ethanol. So we have a mix of around 50 to 55 to 60 shift towards ethanol production, and 40 to 45% of the cane juice is shifted towards the sugar production itself. So we produce ethanol for straight juice, cane juice, not only from molasses and byproducts. And our ethanol production today comprehends around 31 billion liters of ethanol, which by hearing your points, Samir, by 2025, India looking to produce around 7.5 billion out of ethanol from cane and 15 billion liters as a total, seems to be, although steep but achievable. It's something developed over the years. Brazil currently has this is spread out as one full year long crop. So divided between the center-south region and the northeast region, where mostly 90% of our production sits in the center-south, but we also have the northeast with 10%. And out of that ethanol production, currently 92% is cane-based. And today, in the center-west of Brazil, we already have 8% of our ethanol being produced out of corn, which put us into a position where $40 billion is the sugarcane chain's GDP. Also, that with our ethanol fleet, currently Brazilian fleet is around 50 million vehicles, and around plus than 70% of those is already flex fuel cars, which can run on both gasoline blended with 20% anhydrous and or 100% with the hydrous ethanol. And every new car in Brazil, over 90% of those are flex fuels. So we trend to have our fleet in the medium term with a large majority of cars being ethanol potential. And with that, we are the second largest producer of ethanol in the world, as also the exporter. Contextualizing, United States is the first producer in terms of volume, comprehending ethanol produced by corn. But Brazil, with that position of 30 million, is important to state that we shift part of our cane juice towards sugar. So if we consider 100% of the cane juice towards ethanol, and with our corn ethanol production, Brazil could go as high as 55 to 6 billion, considering if all the mills would have distilleries full capacity. So we would be positioned also as potentially the first in the world. So noticing that back to our history, from 75 until today, the ethanol production, which is the bar, managed to grow 45 times, whilst the price during that period is now sitting at 70% of the initial value on applying inflation adjustments on the curve, which means that our growth was the pathway through efficiency, so that to keep a sustainable growth. And not only important to say that during this period where ethanol grew with efficiency, Brazil also took important role in the sugar industry, which is correlated to, is intertwined with our ethanol sector. From 1990, Brazil was only representing 3% of the world trade flow, and with the expansion and the requirement of the world in imports of sugar, by 2021, Brazil was actually at 32 million, moving to 45% stake. So we were responsible for the growth of 70% of the growth in the international market flow in the last 30 years, having the growth of the ethanol industry also with the growth of the sugar share in Brazil, from Brazil. And the ethanol not only supports as a fuel matrix, not only support with the sustainable aspect of it being a clean fuel, but also supports with the economy. Brazil from 2011 to 2020, we became net importers of gasoline. And throughout that, we have imported around 23 billion liters, representing $12 billion of imports in our foreign exchange flow. But if we did not have the volume of anhydrous and anhydrous ethanol produced during that period, we would be necessary to import around 200 billion liters of gasoline, which at present cost would represent $100 billion of deficit into the reserve flow imports of exports. And naturally, going to the production chain, we see this sector as a farming business integrated with an industrial process. So the growth is focused with efficiency gains. So throughout the time, noticing that 70% of production costs are agricultural, and the process of industry today not only produces sugar, ethanol, but most of the mills are integrated with the production of electricity. It blends it well in order to provide profitability to the mills to continue its growth. And with some technologies in the planting, in the harvesting, which currently is around 90% mechanized, unburned cane, which is helpful for the environment. So there are GPS systems being applied, precision techniques into the planting and harvesting, cane variety selections to increase productivity and avoid infestations of pests, as well as soil treatment, and on the industry, the increase of the biogas from vinasse, adding profitability. So these are some of the aspects we've been seeing in the industry that are along the years allowing the mills to continue growing and putting themselves in a position for the fourth stage, as we spoke in the first chart. On the clean piece, and I think on the electrical views, maybe we can approach that, but I trust my colleagues will also add. We have seen that some of the surveys from electrical views globally, when we consider from wheel to well, so throughout the whole process, from the energy power production until the car manufacturing, the utilization of the cars, ethanol is a green fuel, which on the emissions of carbon per kilometer is being posed as being the cleanest among the other electrical views, mainly because most of the countries are still with power-based, focused on polluting sources. So these are aspects that are important. And when you compare to gasoline itself, actually the pollution of ethanol cars only versus gasoline car only is in a survey that was done by a reputable university in Brazil is actually around 4 times less. And importance of the ethanol industry in the energy matrix for Brazil, which includes fuel and power, provided that today the mills in Brazil, they co-generate and export electricity of around 22 terawatts, which is equivalent to 5% of the country's consumption. We today have the sugarcane derivatives with representing 18% of Brazil energy matrix, which along with our high hydraulic system of power producing, Brazil has around 50% of its energy matrix linked to renewables, whilst the rest of the world is currently on an average of 15%. And to conclude my speech and allow my other colleagues to also bring some light to this subject, RenovaBio comes as one of the spurs for what we believe to be the fourth expansion plan, and it's pillared and based on our ethanol industry, which has the focus on incentivizing ethanol production in spite of gasoline sale by sequestrating, by reducing the carbon emissions with a target of ethanol growth, which could lead us growing from our currently 30 billion liters of ethanol towards something of 50 to 60 billion liters of ethanol in the future. And for that growth, again, focusing on the efficiency, Brazil has developed further into the technologies for not only the industry, but on the cane. And today, with as a reality, we already have CTC and other institutions providing cane varieties, which can add 25% of productivity to the world, to the production of cane, but also with the biotechnology, the resistance to herbicides, insects, and droughts could further potentialize the capacity of tons of cane per hectare. And for the future, in terms of plantations of cane, the evolvement of the sugarcane seeds could also bring healthier plantings, also shorter cycles, and mainly cost reduction. So I'd like to thank you all and leave the word to my other colleagues on this session.
Obrigado, Mr. Vale. Srishti, if you're okay, can I invite Mr. Marlon Leal to speak?
Yes, I will be sharing a slide because there seems to be a problem in IT department.
All right, we have the slide.
Yes, okay.
Bom dia, Mr. Marlon Leal.
Dia. Sir Sami.
Welcome.
Mr.
Welcome.
Sami.
And yes.
Thank you very much. Are you hear me?
We can
you
hear
me?
you.
Thank you
Yes,
very
we can
much.
hear you. Mr. Let me
you.
just hear, he's the Coordinator General of Ethanol Department of the Biofuels of the Ministry of Mines and Energy of the Government of Brazil. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Obrigado.
Thank you, and my apologies for getting late here at the meeting and having these problems with the sound and the microphone, but I think that we can move on. I'm sorry for my delay. And I would like to, on behalf of the Ministry of Mines and Energy, say thank you to the organization that allowed us to bring some perspectives, some government perspectives of our biofuels policies. And I believe that I have three main messages to deliver today. So next slide, please. Well, regarding the biofuels, we know that biofuels are strategic in Brazil. We have a huge potential and also competitive advantages in biofuels production, as well as India. I believe that biofuels and the government believe that biofuels represent a sustainable alternative for reducing fossil fuels and imports and emissions. So it is also something, an important tool to deliver energy security. And we have this well-established infrastructure that can think that we can move on and we can even improve and increase our consumption of renewables in transport sector. This is strategic for us, and I believe that with the policies mentioned, especially RenovaBio, we believe that we can move to almost 30% of our renewables share in this energy mix and this matrix, fuel matrix mix by 2030. Next, please. Next slide. Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, the previous one. Thank you. Yes. Regarding biodiesel, we have two main biofuels in Brazil. We have biodiesel and ethanol. Regarding biodiesel, we in a way to increase our participation of biodiesel in the diesel mix to 15%. We have all the tests approved to have the B15 mixture by 2023. And today, due to some contingencies in the context of commodities prices and the currency rate in Brazil. Next slide, please. We were to have this mixture of B13. But because of this comparison chart that we put here, showing that the biodiesel prices due to oil prices rose a lot and established a new pattern, a new level of prices in this year, we had to, due to this substantial increase of price of biodiesel, at those public auctions that we have, we had to reduce the content of biodiesel in the mixture with the diesel oil. So today we have a B10, but we have public auctions every couple of months. We establish the mixture and we proceed with these public auctions to buy the biodiesel, the necessary biodiesel, the necessary volume to do the mixture and provide the country with the proper biofuel. Next slide, please. Next. Yes. But when we think about ethanol, we need to think of this perspective of 40 years that my previous colleague mentioned from Copersuca. He said that we had, yes, 40 years of experiences of mixture over 20% and no issues at all, no technical issues. It followed all the automotive industry evolution in this period. And we have different types of mixtures, different types of percentages that follow the production during the first half of this period. But then we decided to establish this proportion and this mixture by law, and we fixed it under the law requirements, and then we established a kind of a band with lower and upper limits of this mixture. And today we have this this law establishing that we may have a mixture of 18% and up to 27.5%. Today we have 27% mixture. Our flex fuel fleet is about 75% of the fleet, 45 million vehicles today. And this is a very successful policy that enable us to deliver an economic savings due to oil savings and also an environmental benefits that we are going to see forward. Next slide, please. Well, in order to reach this advance of 27% of ethanol mixture in the gasoline, we conducted tests of our fleet, our current fleet of gasoline vehicles by 2014 by Petrobras, that tested together with the Ministry of Mines and Energy the vehicles of our current fleet at that time. We tested vehicles and motorcycles. Our sample of vehicles enable us to test 94% of the share of the gasoline fleet in our fleet in the country at that time, and 100% the sample of motorcycles that we tested, 100% of the gasoline fleet of the motorcycles. Next slide, please. Also, we tested new technologies. And Anfavia, which is the equivalent of SIAM, I believe, in India, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers. They tested the new platforms, the model year 2013, 14, and 15. And all those vehicles were imported, and all those vehicles accepted with no, I must say, with a minor and sometimes none alterations in those parts, in those vehicle parts, enable them to use the 27% mixture. Next slide, please. So we concluded, and since March 2015, we use 27% in the whole country for regular gasoline. We use the mixture of 27% of ethanol in our vehicles. So the results in brief shows us that the mixture up to 27.5% reduces the level of emissions, particulate CO2 and GHG emissions, improves the performance and drivability. The miles per gallon slightly affected, but this is not an issue. It's proportional to the energy content, and we're talking about a fuel that is cheaper than gasoline. No issues in cold starting for electronic fuel injection vehicles, and a slightly increase in NOx and aldehydes, but still well below the acceptable limits of our legislation. Next slide, please. So this is a virtuous cycle that we say that we have with ethanol blend. We have economics plus environmental benefits. We have, with the ethanol blend, with higher ethanol blend, cheaper hydrocarbon chains are necessary to produce the cheaper gasoline because we use cheaper HC chains. It reduces the final price, the fuel final price for the consumer, with the consumer economic benefits for the consumer. So we combine these two aspects that is very important for the energy security, the environmental security, and the legislation is well fulfilled by this policy. Next, please. Next slide. So as a result, we say that for those 40 years of ethanol use in Brazil with light vehicles, we can say that we saved more than 2.15 billion barrels of oil equivalent. It saves the equivalent of 2 years of Brazil oil production. And it saved us also, for the environment, 1.34 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. Next slide, please. So, it's also necessary to say that the COVID-19 and the trend, the tendencies for the automotive industry mainly in the northern hemisphere, it accelerated some decisions of the manufacturers, of the automotive manufacturers. So we need to think of a sustainable mobility that can and need a different platform of vehicles and a different fuel. So we need to use less fossil and more bio, and also to change the platform, the vehicle platform, with more efficient platforms and with different solutions and a gradual kind of electrification of these platforms in order to induce more energy efficiency, and also with addressing these local pollution problems as well. Next. But we need to think this in the right way. We need to the government, what is left for the government? We cannot say which kind of vehicles we need to produce, which one is more efficient, but we need to give the rules for us to do the proper account of emissions and of energy efficiency. So we need to assess the emission from cradle to grave. This is something that we need to think of in order to produce the best results for society. So it is the induction to the best possible efficiency standard and the signal to the market players in the automotive industry that is the energy mix for the medium and the long term. So we need to think about what kind of fuels that we need in in times to come. The next one. Next slide, please. So RenovaBio is this policy that is founded in these three axes. We have a target for the reduction of the carbon footprint of our fuel market, of our fuel mix. The second axis and the second pillar of this policy is the certification of biofuels production within this life cycle analysis. This is very important. It is an individual certification process for biofuels producers that they will have these grades, these efficiency scores. More energy and less CO2 equivalent will give them higher scores. And also this decarbonization credit, that's the CBIO, which give us the market the perspective of fulfillment of these targets that is imposed for these fuel distributors, the blenders. They have individual targets proportional to their fossil fuel market, and this is a mechanism that is starting to move on and to produce its results. We are in this second year the program in this full in this full potential. So we have these targets, and we are giving the proper signal to the market of what kind of energy that we want. We need less carbon intensity in our fuel mix. Next one, please. So what is RenovaBio? It's not a subsidy. It's not an increase in taxes. It's what we're calling the carbon capture machine of Brazil. It values the service of CO2 withdrawal from the atmosphere made by the national production of biofuels. This is a service that generates more competition and efficiency for the market, which results in the lower price for consumers, since they have the benefit of producing their certificate and having these revenues from this decarbonization credit. So for the competition for emitting and providing to the market these certificates will enable the competition to provide a fuel, even a cheaper, even more cheap fuel for the consumer. And next one, please. So this is for your information, the latest signs from RenovaBio, which represents our trends and changes in the perspective of energy planning. Next one, please. As I mentioned, the consumer benefits from biofuels with low price and better environment. Also, the oil industry also benefits from biofuels, which make it more sustainable. And the environmental service provided by biofuels is gaining this momentum. We know that the world is pushing for this this trend, and this mechanism, the RenovaBio mechanism, are among the best solutions that can share to the transition of a lower carbon and a global bioeconomy. This is the message that we wanted to deliver. Next one is just our thank you message. And thank you for your time and for your attention.
Obrigado, Mr. Marlon Areias. Thank you very much for giving the Brazilian experience, showing how policy, markets, and signals can lead to a more sustainable and environmentally friendly solution with agriculture as its DNA. So thank you also for this. I'd like to now welcome Dr. Plinio Nastari, an old friend. I know him for about 15 years now. We have shared many conversations together about how to move towards a more sustainable world. He is the head of Data Agro, and also he's the president of iBio, the Brazilian Institute of Bioenergy and the Bioeconomy. Welcome to this program. Obrigado for this, and bom dia.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Somaya. It's a pleasure to see you again. I would like to thank CII for the invitation and all my colleague speakers, and I greet also all participants. Let me share my presentation. I trust, okay. I would like to start pointing that this wonderful machine is sugarcane. 1 metric ton of sugarcane is equivalent to 1.2 barrels.
Cadê a sua máscara?
What? It's equivalent to 1.2 barrel of oil. And out of 1 ton of sugarcane, you can get pretty much 3 almost equal parts. 1/3 is the energy contained in total reducing sugars, 1/3 is energy in bagasse, 1/3 in leaves. And the secret of this machine is how to use better this energy. And what Brazil has done with the diversification with ethanol and is now moving towards further diversification routes is to use this wonderful machine in a better way. And as this utilization of energy improves, you expand production and you spend capabilities. So Brazil moved from sugar to ethanol to bioelectricity, now is moving towards second G ethanol, all from sugarcane, to biogas, biomethane, to production of bagasse pellets, integration with grain ethanol, extraction of yeast from fermentation. Now the future is biochemistry, producing biojet fuel from ethanol and other products, and capturing CO2. This diversification has allowed the industry to move in scale since 1975 from 7.1 million tons of total reducing sugars to 94.4 million tons in 2021. And you can see the shares of sugar and hydrous ethanol blended in gasoline and hydrous ethanol used by initially the neat ethanol and now the flex fleet. And the global experience that India can take in its drive to achieve E20 is that Brazil has been able to achieve 48% substitution of gasoline in 2020 using the blend and using the flex fleet. And you can see other countries that are also pursuing the same route. And we are glad to see that India is moving quickly towards E20. While Brazil is 48%, in some states like São Paulo, the substitution is 64%. In Mato Grosso, 70.5%. In Goiás, 64.8%, which are the areas where you have the largest concentration of production. But you can also see that in other states, we have very large levels of substitution. In the Northeast, around 38%. In the southern part of Brazil, around 28%. In the north part, between 30 and 34%. All this came from the introduction of automobile technology that enables the use of both higher blends and also neat ethanol. And this started in early 80s with the neat ethanol fleet in blue and developed with the flex fleet starting March 2003. And one very important key to this whole process was the stability and the progressive way in which the blend mandate evolved. And you can see that since 1978, as previous colleagues have pointed out, we have had blends at or higher 20% since 1978. And mid-level blends, so-called, with higher than 20% blends, are the target of many automakers to obtain high-octane fuels, smaller engines, more efficient engines. Okay. Solar and wind energy is great, is very clean, but it's intermittent. And the OPEX cost is low, but then you have to store it. You either put it in the grid or you have to store it. When you have to store it, and you have to store to use in transportation, in cars, then the problem becomes the battery. And the main issue with batteries is their low energy density. Today, the typical lithium-ion car battery pack has a little bit over 100, 180 watt-hour per kilogram of energy density. The industry target is to reach 330 watt-hour per kilogram. One day, if everything goes well, maybe batteries will be able to achieve 700 or 800 watt-hour per kilogram. So the evolution of energy density in batteries is indicated in this graph, going from 180 to 330, maybe one day 700. Well, what is the energy density of ethanol? 6,200 watt-hour per kilogram. Which means what? If I place this graph in this one, it looks like this, which means that I need a lot of batteries to substitute for the energy content in a ethanol fuel tank. And that's why electric battery vehicles are so expensive, because they require a lot of batteries, and batteries are increasingly expensive. So solar and wind are great, but the problem with them is the battery required. And the largest battery plant in the world, which is Tesla's plant in Nevada, would take 500 years to make enough batteries to store just 1 day's worth of US electricity demand, exactly because of this low density. So the next steps, as we see, is that we should move forward, and we recommend India to do the same and other countries, to move forward in the optimization of internal combustion engines using high-octane fuels, and then to move forward into hybrid vehicles, and then to move forward with electrification using sustainable biofuels. So answering another of your questions, Chancellor Somaya, how do we see electrification? Well, electrification can be done in different ways, with batteries and also with liquid fuels, preferably clean liquid fuels like biofuels. And Nissan in 2016 said that with the current ethanol distribution infrastructure, Brazil has already solved the hydrogen distribution hurdle. With an electrification which does not require rare metals using ethanol, and with the distribution of ethanol in over 42,000 pump stations as solos or blended fuel in gasoline, Brazil has been able to achieve a network of hydrogen already in place. In terms of pollution, the air quality index measured in terms of concentration of particulate matter, 2.5 micrograms. Well, the 50 most polluted cities in the world are located in Asia, 25 in India, 22 in China, 2 in Pakistan, 1 in Bangladesh, with levels between 60 and 136 average micrograms per cubic meter of air. São Paulo, a city with over 20 million people, more than 8.5 million cars, is ranked number 879 in the world, with an average of only 16 micrograms per cubic meter, well under the 20 micrograms precluded by the World Health Organization. Why? Simply because ethanol does not produce particulate matter, just like biodiesel. So you need to have a policy on biofuels, which must be integrated. Policy integrated with other policies, which must be consistent over time. Integrated with the policy for the environment, for the general energy policy, the industrial policy to produce automobiles, the policy on agriculture, the economic policy, and the policy on regional development. All this must be integrated. And the regulation should ensure efficiency and sustainability. It is recommended that regulations address in a proper, definite, coherent, and consistent way. First, ethanol specification for per use of producers, automakers, fuel distributors, and pump stations. Emission limits that recognize the advantages of ethanol. Incentives for increased energy and environmental efficiency for automakers. And incentives for ethanol producers to increase the energy and environmental efficiency in their production. And regulation can ensure that ethanol is produced in a sustainable way, observing international criteria on sustainability and efficiency, and do not threaten protected biomas, just like RenovaBio has done here in Brazil. Well, Brazil shows that it has created a fuel distribution system for both the use of ethanol as a sole fuel and for the blending of ethanol in all gasoline sold in a country which is continental size like India, and in diesel as well. And the message Brazil has learned is that biofuel is hydrogen It's solar energy or hydrogen, captured, stored, and distributed in an efficient, economical, and safe manner. The advantages of ethanol are, first, it's drop-in, does not require the building up of a new fleet or a fuel distribution infrastructure. It enables immediate implementation and results. It's replicable. There's no technical barrier. It's scalable. It can grow over time. It has proven environmental and health benefits, both at local and global emissions. It's affordable in price to consumers. It uses the vehicles that consumers are used to. It promotes local income and jobs to farmers. The high octane of ethanol complements gasoline well and enables the use of lower cost blend feedstocks. And it provides sustainability and longevity for the use of these traditional sources of energy, enabling automakers to meet the most restrictive emission targets. So we bring this strategic vision for the future of mobility, the vision that it's possible to enlarge the use of high density, low carbon liquid fuels, stimulating higher energy efficiency and lower environmental footprint, complementing in a virtuous way renewable and traditional fuels, using the existing infrastructure and promoting local technologies in fuel production, capital goods, and in automobile technology. We are moving towards the age of hydrogen. For energy in transport, hydrogen represented by high density, low carbon footprint, sustainably produced advanced biofuels such as ethanol, biogas, and biomethane that can use the existing distribution infrastructure. And the changes in cost in automobiles is very little. Initially, it was around $100, $120 per vehicle. Now it's equal because all the standards for production of auto parts have been adapted to the use of ethanol. The impact of pollution is proven, recognized, and it should measure the different qualities in the hydrocarbon emissions coming out of vehicles, because the hydrocarbon emissions coming from ethanol are mostly non-reactive. How did Brazil deal with the drought? Well, because of the existing of the use of ethanol by the flex fleet, exactly because it's flex, the fleet can adapt to a temporary reduction in production. So this has been dealt. How do we see electric vehicles? Well, there are different electric vehicles, battery vehicles and biofuel run electric vehicles. We believe that hybrids and fuel cells using ethanol is the way forward, complementing, of course, battery electric vehicles for specific applications. And this helped the expansion of production very much in the past 45 years. And we see that this whole process can help a lot the industry in India, not only sugarcane, but also the capital goods, the automobile industry, and the whole economy as a whole, reducing the energy dependency and reducing gasoline and petroleum imports and improving the environment, at the same time supporting the ag sector. So thank you very much.
Obrigado. Thank you for answering many of my questions. It was wonderful to hear the entire range of how what an equivalent of energy sugarcane is, and how it leads to much better air quality, as you said, and how you compare electric vehicles to the ethanol itself as a carrier of hydrogen and being a much more wholesome fuel. So, obrigado again. I would like to now invite Mr. Ricardo Abreu. He is a representative of the automobile industry. He's an advisor to the Brazilian Association of Automotive Engineering, AEA, and Unica's consultant for mobility issues. Thank you very much for joining us today. I would also like to ask, if we have an existing car, is it difficult to retrofit? So Dr. Nastari spoke about how it would be $100 difference earlier and now equal, but if you had an existing range, is retrofitting expensive or even possible? So while you do help us, Mr. Ricardo Abreu, if you can also address that question. Obrigado.
I have been changing my presentation during the last minutes, because when you participate in such an event, so high level people, very good informations have already been done, and I tried to put together some slides here to complement what has been said, trying to answer your questions. Therefore, I'm going to go directly to some technical issues and show you some slides about that. If you can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes. We can.
Can you see my screen? My presentation?
Yeah, we can see the screen, but it is not in presentation mode.
Wow.
But we can see it.
And now?
Yep, perfect. Perfect.
Okay, thanks. Well, when you ask me if we can retrofit the vehicles, how much is that going to cost? You need to remember that Brazil has been using ethanol as a blend component for gasoline since 1938. That means it's a long time. In several rivers with different blends, but we have always used ethanol as a blend composition. Therefore, many of the questions that India does, for us, is already standard for us for such a long time that we don't need to make a retrofit in terms of taking vehicles that have never run on ethanol and making it run on ethanol. Therefore, I'm going to use more or less the international experience on that, talking a little bit about what's going on all over the world. If you took the example, if you take the example from the United States, for instance, they are using E10 for a long time, and they've made a lot of tests. And when you change these materials, or when you protect your vehicle with these measures that I showed here, using the right materials like plastics and using the right materials for pumps and so on, there is no problem using E10. And that's more or less a standard worldwide nowadays. And even in the States, from 2006 on, E15 is allowed for all vehicles produced after 2001. That means the use of ethanol in the international industry is accepted up to E10 without an issue. And I would say even up to E20, it would not be a technical problem, but it can be a legal problem. Therefore, to go to E20, you must check with the OEMs due to the guarantee issues and the safety issues each time. But it shouldn't be a problem. And in this kind of vehicles produced in the last 20 years, if you go to blends between E10 and E15, would be no need to make any retrofit. Perhaps you need to change the fuel filters, yes, and mainly because when you use ethanol, it can change a little bit the composition that from the residues you have in your filter, and you must start using new materials. But that's not a big issue at all. But I need to say that this change that have been done in the past all over the world were not only due to the fuel, they were done because the technology to control emissions requested that. Therefore, the new technologies to control emissions like improved system to control air-fuel ratio, the use of catalysts, new sensorings, and so on, made these changes already standard in the market. Marlon has already described how, for instance, E27 have been released in Brazil, and all vehicles that have been prepared to run on E20 showed no problem. And nowadays, more than 90% of the Brazilian production are flex fuel vehicles, and we have no quality or performance issue using that. And other countries, mainly in Latin America, that import Brazilian cars also don't have that. When you talk about the new technologies that are going to be produced in the market from now on, like gasoline direct injection, turbocharging, and engines with downsizing, hybridization, all of them request the same material levels that ethanol requests. That means that's going to become a standard in the market. Therefore, here I would like to make my first message in this speech. If you go to a new fuel with a higher blend, ethanol blend, the most interesting thing to do is to implement right now flex fuel vehicles. Even if you don't have the fuel available, start using flex fuel vehicles with the fuel you have in such a way that when higher blends are available, you have already a fleet ready to use that in the best way. And the benefits of ethanol are going to be implemented quicker. And all these benefits that Plinius had described in terms of water quality and so on can be achieved sooner. That's one of the beauties of ethanol. It's a kind of fuel that changes your past, it changes your legacy fleet emissions as well when you use that. Therefore, it's very important to introduce flex fuel vehicles as soon as possible, even if you cannot count on big amounts of ethanol for this moment. Also because ethanol is the best blend to improve fuel quality. Using ethanol, it's possible in the modern engines to improve up to 10% the fuel efficiency. Therefore, it's also a way to reduce emissions because you spend less fuel and have more fuel to be used by more cars when you use less fuel. And for sure, the economics is also a point. Therefore, all these advantages must be used to make the transition for a low-carb society. In fact, I'm used to saying that the future is not going to be only one solution game. You are going to have a combination on many solutions. We will have to use hydrocarbons, fossil fuel, for a long time because they are cheap energy. And if you combine that with biofuels, for instance, if you make a suitable ethanol gasoline blend, you can extend the use of your fossil fuel source without having very high carbon emissions. If you combine biofuels with electricity with a hybrid bioelectric car, you can reduce a lot of the emissions, even more than if you use electricity alone in many countries. And later on, the use of hydrogen is also going to be a very good solution. But none of them is going to be the, let's say, winner. We are going to make the best composition in each market segment, in niches, different solutions are going to apply better than the others. That means we need to be preparing for this plurality. I am used to say that it's not important how you get there, but the important thing is low carbon mobility. And low carbon mobility belongs to the better use of biofuels combined with all other alternatives. Well, as we have of biofuels, use of hybrid biofuels is the most important trend in the future. If you look at the battery that the Toyota Corolla Flex Hybrid or use, is less than 5% the size of an equivalent vehicle if it's full electric. And we know that battery is not only a cost problem, but it's also a raw material sourcing problem. And also, battery produces a lot of CO2 to be produced. That means this flex hybrid, it's not batterization, it's a way to get the benefits of introducing the electrification in the vehicles, and it can be used together with other ways to use ethanol in the mobility. For instance, as has already been said, to produce hydrogen in such a way that these alternatives are going to compose the map of alternatives that all countries can do, depending on the country's source, in more in one direction, more in the other direction. But what is important? It's important to start now, right now, because the sooner you start, the sooner you can flat the CO2 increase curve. And that's the most important thing about biofuels. How long is going to take if you rely only in electric vehicles to have enough vehicles on the field to control the carbon level, the greenhouse gases level in the atmosphere? A lot of time, because you need to have the fleet first, and after that you're going to have your results. If you use biofuel with flex fuel, this benefit comes right now, and therefore you can flatten your curve while the temperature has not increased yet. So I think that's what I had to say to complement my brilliant colleagues that spoke before me, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Mr. Abreu. If there is anything you would like to add, I didn't want my question to substitute any other part of the presentation you were making today. I hope I did not interrupt any normal preparation that you may have had.
I'm here to do my best to answer your question. That means that was not, it was good that you have made your question before in order to allow us to get to your targets. Thank you very much for that.
Obrigado. We have now Julian Beach, Director of Business Development of Green Fuel. Thank you so much again for joining us today.
Very many thanks. Are you seeing it in presentation mode? Oh, hang on one moment. Sorry. Just bear with me for a second. How do I share content? Do I need to click on share content? Sorry, I'm not familiar with WebEx.
Srishti, if you can help him. Normally there's a share button at the bottom.
Okay, no, I've got it. I've got it.
Yeah, okay.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Is that showing in presentation mode?
Yes, it is. It is. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Let me just hang on. That's it. Good morning, everybody. Bom dia para todos. My name is Julian Beach. I am Business Development Director of Green Fuels Limited. I don't seem to be able to. I'm very sorry about this. I don't seem to be able to forward to progress the presentation.
Is it possible with the arrow keys? Did you try?
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Not right, not down.
No, nothing's happening. I'm going to have to come out of presentation mode, I'm afraid. Oh, wait a minute.
It's
Stop
still the
sharing.
same.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's
You
better.
can try.
Okay, it's working now.
Perfect. Yeah.
My apologies. So let's
No, it's
start
working.
again.
Perfect.
So good morning, everyone. Bom dia para todos. I thought it'd be interesting to give a sort of real world case study of our Green Fuels' activities and projects in Brazil, and how those can be replicated in India. Sorry, it's not progressing again. I'm terribly sorry about this.
Do you want to just, do you want to speak?
Well, okay.
That worked.
Yeah, okay. So Greenfield Ventures America Latina is our majority-owned subsidiary based in Rio de Janeiro. It was founded in 2018. We are the biofuels refining technology provider in the Plataforma de Bioquerosene e Renováveis da Zona da Mata, which is an integrated biokerosene, sustainable aviation fuel, and biodiesel platform. We look to convert used cooking oil collected in municipalities to biodiesel and eventually sustainable aviation fuel in the state and eventually rolled out across Brazil. It's a sustainable development effort based on transformation of UCO into and animal fats into biodiesel and SAF. And it's a consortium consisting of UK and Brazilian federal governments, state government, municipalities, renewable energy companies, feedstock suppliers, offtake partners such as municipal transport, road freight, and airlines. The fuel produced by our equipment meets European Union EN 14214 and US ASTM standards for biodiesel. It's a drop-in blend, bearing in mind Plinio's remarks earlier. So no modification is required to engines under current blends. And so that's the kind of picture so far. Moving on to the next slide. The process with this is that we collect used cooking oil from households, restaurant chains such as McDonald's, KFC, and so on, and industrial kitchens in Juiz de Fora and in other municipalities. Biodiesel is refined in Juiz de Fora in our Fuelmatic GSX-3, which is a mobile, scalable, skid-mounted biorefinery, leading to sales at auction to ANP stroke Petrobras, also under the regime autoproductor, self-producer regime for large UCO producers to fuel their own fleets, generators, which particularly for multinationals provides very quick decarbonisation and ESG wins. Also, interestingly, legislation is in progress, and I'm sure my colleagues on this panel will be able to tell you more about that, to permit direct sale by biofuels producers to users and distributors. So we're building refining capacity in Brazil. Basically, there are more than 50 municipalities in Brazil capable of supporting at least one Fuelmatic GSX-3 at 3 tons per day, as I've shown you in the example in Juiz de Fora. Cities like São Paulo, which has been mentioned previously, Rio, Belo Horizonte, and so on, can support multiple Fuelmatic GSX-20s, which is the biorefinery you can see in the photograph, at 20 tons a day. Eventually, we will also construct several regional hubs connected to distributed biodiesel plants to hydroprocess biodiesel into sustainable aviation fuel and HVO stroke green diesel. So a bit of a little focus on the Brazilian market. Obviously, feedstock rich. In terms of used cooking oil, just 7% of the used cooking oil available in Brazil at the moment is used for making biodiesel. A lot of it is disposed of, posing health and pollution hazards into water courses and so on, and a lot is actually filtered and reused, which is also a health hazard. Brazil has the largest area of degraded agricultural land in the world. Almost all freight in Brazil is trucks, and there is already an established, as we've already seen in previous presentations, a very well established and mature biofuels industry built around ethanol and more recently around agricultural biodiesel. I've already mentioned the autoprodutor policy. Interesting, again, Plinian's discussion on, oops, I beg your pardon, I'm going to go back, sorry, on distributed energy. Again, we see this as, in terms of energy density, a really important arrow in the quiver, if you like, of decarbonisation and distributed scale energy generation. In the longer term, there's a sustainable aviation fuel opportunity. Gol Aerolíneas Inteligentes is the anchor off-taker for the Zona da Mata platform for sustainable aviation fuel, where, as I mentioned previously, we are the refining technology provider. And there are 5 regional airlines in total operating routes in Brazil. Also, major ports for marine fuel usage. There is the B13 blend, which somebody mentioned earlier is currently B10 due to pricing and pandemic-related issues. But the plan is, as I understand it, to increase to B15 in 2023. This is one of the largest mandates in the world. Already been discussed in RenovaBio, which is a system of tradable carbon credits, tradable on the Bovespa, the São Paulo Stock Exchange, called CBIOS. And also on the agricultural side, we are very much involved, the platform is very much involved in sustainable cultivation of macaúba, which is a native oil crop to the region, targeting eventually 130,000 hectares planted in partnership with small family farmers. In terms of used cooking oil, again, the current biofuel industry is very much agro-industrial, so waste to biofuels is less developed, thus a great opportunity for us to gain feedstock. So traction to date in Brazil, we're a signatory to the MOU for the platform, as I've mentioned, with 40 municipalities in the region, Zona da Mata region, to establish distributed scale hub and spoke cluster biofuel production in that region. It includes reforestation initiatives using Macaúba in sustainable agricultural systems in the Mata Atlantica biome and also in the savanna. I've mentioned the Juiz de Fora plant already, and we have a planned deployment to more than 20 municipalities, major population centres by 2026. Discussions are also ongoing with major independent energy utilities or independent power providers for distributed energy opportunities in peak consumption, what's known as peak shaving, and or grid replacement under the Autoprodutor regime. And we're also participating in research and development demonstration and commercial facilities for sustainable aviation fuel offtake by GOL. And we have already planted 40 hectares of Macaúba in partnership with a local partner in the Zona da Mata region. So in terms of replication in India, we're really focused on used cooking oil. We've established a majority-owned subsidiary, Aris Green Fuels Private Limited. There are some great, India is also very much leading the world, like Brazil, in building a viable, sustainable, robust bioeconomy with a B5 blend mandate, prohibition of UCO exports, which obviously provides us with a guaranteed source of feedstock. 10-year, we have recently received a 10-year offtake offer letter from Bharat Petroleum, which is one of the state-owned oil marketing companies. And perhaps most importantly, current refining capacity meets approximately 10% of blend demand. So there's enormous scope for growth. This gives us and other companies operating in the same space confidence in terms of investment planning. We will be shipping very soon this year our first 20-ton per day plant to Mumbai and rolling out between now and 2026 to 20 major population centres. And this is being helped by our partnership with Petrofac New Energy Services, who are already based in India and are a world-class EPC. So that really, I think, concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Obrigado para todos.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. It's been a very interesting presentation by everyone. Srishti, do we have time for questions? I know we're running late by already by 10 minutes. Or should I wrap up? I think maybe we're running late. I'll wrap up. I want to thank every one of you for sparing your morning in Brazil and being with us today and making us feel more encouraged that the path India is on is a good one. It's a sustainable one for the country to meet its energy security. It'll be continued to be good with small farmers because the energy market is large and it keeps growing. And this would provide livelihood security to those farmers. Very encouraged by seeing the air quality index of Sao Paulo and hoping that as we develop a more robust program that helps us further. Also good to see that I like the idea that we should start creating flex cars now so that there is no you're ready for it as the transformation comes. I also think that there will be no one solution going forward, and we will have to adapt to adapt and mold policy. So we'll have to adapt to policy and also work to mold policy and be with the new energy mobility that is with us. So thank you very much to all of you. Also very good to see the biodiesel using cooking oils as and happy to see that you're going to be shipping your first container out for green fuel. And thank you, all of you today. Thank you very much for being with us and spending the morning. Thank you, Mr. Marlon Leal. Thank you, Mr. Daniel Vele. Thank you, Dr. Nastari. Thank you, Mr. Abreu. And thank you, Mr. Beach. Obrigado and bom dia.
Thank you very much. Bom dia.
Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.
Very much. Goodbye, Chancellor Samir.
Obrigado.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Somaya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah.